Good afternoon. We're going to start this afternoon by standing together. We're going to join in singing I'll Fly Away. So let's stand together. Some glad morning when the sun is over, I'll fly away to a home on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die in my I'll fly away. The stars will raise together. I'll fly away to a land where joy shall never end. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. Yes, the shadows of this life have gone, I'll fly away. Like a bird from prison bars has flown, I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this time that we had to come together this afternoon to celebrate the life of Kvarnstrom. Lord, we thank you for the beautiful sunshine you provided for us today. And as we reminisce and look back, as we shed a tear, as we have some laughter, as we share the memories, Lord, we just pray that you will just show your blessings, that you'll be the God of comfort beyond all understanding to us this afternoon. And just let us, Lord, know that you love us and know that you love Carl and we love you. Lord, so we just ask, let us now relax and look back, Lord, with joy, knowing that he's with you today. So we thank you, Lord, and we lift this afternoon up to you. In Jesus' name. Anybody be seated. Hey, Richard, sorry about that. That was my bad.
Oh, it's okay. We made it work.
Yeah, I'll explain that. Okay, and welcome to everybody to come this afternoon as we celebrate the life of Carl Kvarnstrom. And my name is Bob Graham, and I'm the deacon here at Skokomish Community Church and a longtime friend of Carl and Sandy. And something I wanted to mention too, if you notice right outside of this window, you'll see some wind chimes. And the reason they're hanging there today is you'll see a little golden attachment at the top, and those contain some of Carl's ashes. So today, as we hear that sound out there, those chimes, is in the memories. And I kind of joked with Sandy yesterday. I said, okay, what that means is you're hearing those chimes out there going ding-a-ling while we're listening to the ding-a-ling up here, don't you? So we have a kind of a double whammy today on that. Carl Leroy Kvarnstrom, longtime resident of Mason and Kitsap counties. He and his wife Sandy moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico in 2019, where Carl passed away October 19, 2022. Carl was born June 15, 1934, to Royal Sacred Kvarnstrom in Bremerton, Washington, and was a fourth-generation descendant of Chief Seattle. He graduated from Bremerton High School in June of 1953 and was proud veteran of the U.S. Army, serving from 1953 to 1956, both in the United States and around the world. After serving in the Army, Carl worked for the Boeing Company for several years and then for the Washington State Department of Transportation, as we know it, the DOT, retiring from there in 1989 due to an injury. During that time, Carl married his first wife, Lois, which also resulted in the adoption of Lois's grandson, Shane. But sadly, Lois passed away, leaving Carl and Shane to become a team, living for several years along Highway 3 south of Allen, where Carl had a small Christmas tree farm. On November 1st, 1986, Carl married Sandy Jensen, making their home near the small town of Allen, Washington. And not only did Carl now have a new wife, but a bonus addition to his family and his beloved stepdaughter, Kimberly. In 1990, Carl and Sandy bought the Pretty Canyon Drive-In on Highway 101 north of Shelton near the intersection of the Snoqualmie Valley Road, where they formed many lasting relationships. They owned a restaurant and a home, plus a mobile home rental for Kimberly, and her son Christopher, who was born in 1992. When Kim and Sandy were busy working at the restaurant, Christopher spent many hours with Papa, fishing, target shooting, and delivering corn for Holden Johnson. It was also during this period of time that Patty Diamond came into Carl's life as his honorary daughter. In 2007, Carl and Sandy sold the restaurant, the homes, and the property to the state of Washington, allowing the state to undertake a road improvement and flood control project. After doing so, they moved to Shelton, Washington, and Kim and Christopher moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico. After spending several winters in a retirement mobile home park in Yuma, Arizona, they decided they wanted to be closer to Kim, so in 2019 moved to Albuquerque, which became their home also. Carl enjoyed being outdoors, and among many of his adventures, he and a friend hauled horses to Alaska. He will be remembered by the many people he helped over the years, along with his great cooking and many Kim's friends who affectionately called him Papa. He was a quiet person, but loved helping others. It can truly be said that Carl never met a stranger. Carl is survived by his beloved wife, Sandy, stepdaughter, Kim Weinberger, grandson, Christopher Crablet, who's in the Air Force, currently stationed in Rota, Spain, Christopher's wife, Alexandria, and the children, Carl's great-grandchildren, Zoe and Zachary Crablet, step-grandson, Shane of Port Colorado, and sister, Mary Lou Slaughter of Port Orange, Washington. So, I want to thank you again for coming today as we remember Carl. And a little later on, there's going to be a time for sharing of memories and an opportunity for some of you to share memories that you have. So I'll be thinking about that. And I know there's many of them, so I hope that you will share. So, I'm standing here today, and what's going through my mind? I'm thinking, you know somebody for so many years, and never dreamed that one day you're going to be doing what I'm doing today, standing in front of a bunch of people, looking back, reminiscing, and reflecting on memories to honor a good friend. When Sandy first asked me to speak today, a lot went through my mind. What do I do? What do I say? How do I say it? What do I say to the family for encouragement? And a lot of questions, a lot of uncertainties. But I was honored to be asked, and I just said I would try to do my best, and I've already messed up this morning. What can I say? Two things. One, I got the song reversed. So I like to blame that on the tech, but I can't this morning. And then I found out yesterday that I had been mispronouncing Carl and Sandy's last name for years. And I probably did this morning, and I probably will a little later on. You know, it's, I used this example yesterday. There used to be a commercial on years ago. I tried to pronounce it the way Sandy told me to, and I couldn't get my tongue to work right. I told her, I said, I just brushed my teeth. I can't do a thing with them. So, you know, I just couldn't get it. But it's like that commercial when the Isuzu car first came out, and we had this little Oriental that was trying to teach the guy how to say Isuzu, and he's American, and he just couldn't say it. He kept Isuzu, couldn't do it. And finally, the little Oriental guy looks at him and says, "Oh, that's okay. I can't pronounce Chevrolet." So I'm going to have trouble with it this afternoon, and please accept my apologies for it. A couple of things I wanted to mention before we get started. I'm sure you're all familiar with Ecclesiastes 3:4. that tells us there's a time to weep and a time to laugh. So as we look back on Carl's life today, we're going to be reminded of the void that we have that's been left in our lives. We loved him and we miss him. So if you want to or need to cry, that's okay. The only thing I ask, don't get me started, because I would like to be able to talk and finish up today. But also, if you need to laugh, that's okay too, because we're going to have some good memories. And we're going to have some cherished memories and remember the joys that we had in knowing Carl. So that's part of the healing process as well. So we're going to do both this afternoon. And quite frankly, I really have a hunch that Carl would probably want us to do a little more laughing and crying today this afternoon. So we can keep that in mind.
Look at the screen.
Yeah. Okay. And after giving a lot of thought about what to say and doing some reminiscing and reading the account of Carl's life that I just read, that one the Sandy provided, it's clear that Carl had many adventures and he touched many lives, and we've seen many of those here today. And I'm glad to say that I was among one of those lives that he touched. And again, I hope a little later on we're going to take some time, and I hope some of you will share some of the things how he touched your life. I met Carl when he worked for the Washington State Highway Department, and at that time I worked for the Mason County Road Department. And the shop that we worked out of were for just a few blocks apart, so we saw each other quite often. And I can't remember exactly what year we met, but let's just say it was many years ago, probably sometime in the mid to late 1970s. So putting that in perspective, I guess I can say we met sometime in the second half of the last century. Now, when I mentioned that to Sandy, I got myself in trouble again, because she said, thank you, Bob, for making me feel old. She said, when I see you, she said, I'm going to hit you with my cane. So I had to keep my distance. And we noticed when she first got it, it was straight. And you notice all of those. So my vision in memory of Carl, I'll share that with you. It was Carl in a yellow hard hat and orange Negro vest. That's my vision, because that's when I met him, and that's how we knew each other in the beginning. I'm sure there are many other visions and memories of Carl that a lot of you have, likely him dressed in camo, wearing a hunting vest, or with an apron on, standing in front of a barbecue, or in front of a stove, or just a vision and memory of Papa. And I'm sure he'd be proud of any one of those visions and memories, just as each one of us cherishes those memories. And although we worked for different agencies, Carl for the state, me for the county, many of the duties that we had were the same. And I'm sure that we shared some of the perceived stereotype images that were so prevalent back then for us government workers. You know the one, the guy standing along the road leaning on the shovel, you know, the jokes that went along with them. And I'm sure you've heard this one. This one about the road crew who went out to the job site one morning, and after arriving there, discovered they had a problem. So the road boss, seeking instruction and attempting to ease the expected reaction, radioed the road engineer saying, "Sir, we seem to have a situation out here, and the crew's eagerness to get to the job site and get to work, they forgot to bring their shovels." There was a pause as the road boss waited in nervous anticipation for a response. And then the engineer replied with a most authoritative voice, "Okay, we'll send some out just as soon as we can. But since they don't have their shovels, I guess in the meantime they'll just have to lean on each other." You know, hearing that joke, I can hear Carl's laughter when he heard that kind of teasing. And just taking it in stride, not being offended, and just being Carl. And I also kind of think that just maybe, knowing Carl, he might have had the tendency to just quit back and say, well, you know what, if I'm going to be accused, I might just consider being guilty. And then his laugh. But I'm convinced Carl was not a leader. Carl was a doer. And looking back at that account of his life that I read a bit ago, about his adventures, his activities, his love of helping others, I think his being a doer seems quite obvious. And then the reality of it is, too, as a DOT worker, he was one of those guys who was out there in the good weather or bad, daylight or dark, weekend, weekday, snow, rain, wind, hot, cold, whatever the condition, to keep the roads open for you and for me, and for those who chose to travel through. And that's the side of the job, like Carl had, that most people don't see. And I've given a lot of thought to that, because we live in a rather rural part of the state, which back when Carl worked there and I worked there was probably even considered somewhat remote. And speaking from his experience, it's sometimes a real challenge to maintain roads in a rural or remote setting. But I assure you that those who have the task to do so, like Carl did, do the best they can with what they have. Even though the roads may not always be the straightest, the widest, or the smoothest. And I thought about that too, about rural roads not always being the straightest, the widest, or the smoothest. And then I realized something. Even though the geometry and conditions may not always be the best, it's along those rural and remote roads that you will find some of the most beautiful scenery, the most beautiful sights. And then when you reach your destination, you'll see some of the most breathtaking views that you'll ever see. There's a Forest Service road just north of here. I'm sure some of you have traveled it. It's the little road that goes up to an area called Staircase, which is at the foot of the Olympic Mountains. Just north of here was a food sport. And the last time I was there on that road, it was dodging one chuck hole within another. But the scenery was fantastic. And the view at the end of the road is just so well worth the trip. And thinking about that type of idea, I think Carl had a good grasp on that, as he enjoyed the views of the Olympic Swift Canal, the local rivers and streams, the wildlife, and the hunting trips he went on, and many of those hunting trips with men from this church, and then the trips that he made to Alaska as well. I'm sure he experienced that and knew that. But the point is, if you focus on the joys on the way to your destination and the joy you'll experience when you get there, the humps, bumps, twists, and narrowness become immaterial. And that made me think a little bit more. As I thought about the rural road sometimes being narrow, bumpy, and winding, but leading you through beautiful scenery, wonderful memories, the indescribable destinations, I thought about life's journey, particularly the Christian life. Not always easy, also sometimes narrow, bumpy, and winding, but leading you through beautiful scenery, wonderful memories, to an indescribable destination. Matthew 7:14 describes it this way. But small is the gate, and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. And that small gate and narrow road is described in John 16:6, when Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And just like our narrow, bumpy rural roads that lead to the most beautiful destinations are many times the ones less traveled, often the small gate and the narrow road that leads to life, that eternal life in heaven, is also the route that is less traveled. So if we choose to enter through that small gate and narrow road that leads to life, how do we overcome those humps and bumps that we know as life's trials? Jeremiah 6:16 says this, stand by the roads and look. Ask for the ancient paths where the good way is, and walk in it, and find rest for your souls. In Matthew 11:28, Jesus said, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. And so we ask, what are those ancient paths? Those are the way of salvation as described in God's Word, the Holy Bible. Those paths will lead us through beautiful times, creating wonderful memories. We know them as blessings. Those paths, roads may become bumpy, narrow, and winding at times, but will ultimately lead to that indescribable destination of eternal salvation in heaven with our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. The first song that we sang today, I'll Fly Away, is a reminder of that. That's why I chose it. As a Christian, someday we can leave our troubles and trials behind us and we'll fly away to that land where joy shall never end. And we'll be rewarded too. James 1:12 tells us, "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him." But the choice is ours. There's also that wide gate and broad road that we choose to take. The first half of Matthew 7:13 advises us, enter through the narrow gate. Then it warns us in the second half of that same verse, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. Then we ask, what is the wide gate and the broad road? There are many false teachings out there. There are many religions that strive to be user-friendly and seek God through the eyes of the world rather than seeking salvation through works, rather than seeing the world through the eyes of God and seeking salvation through the saving grace of Jesus. The New Living Translation describes the wide gate and broad road this way. You can enter God's kingdom only through the narrow gate. The highway to hell is broad, and its gate is wide for the many who choose that way. And when I read that, I closed my eyes and I thought, and I just couldn't help but get in this mental picture of being on I-5 trying to get to SeaTac during rush hour. I thought that was just fitting to this verse. So there we have it, two roads to choose from. The broad road that leads to destruction, or the narrow one that leads to life, eternal life. And, by the way, that narrow road is not a toll road. It's free to anyone who chooses it. And Jesus paid the toll on the cross a little over 2,000 years ago. And Carl knew roads well. We know that. That was his job, his livelihood. He knew roads well. And I think he knew the roads that I described today. And that can be our encouragement, knowing Carl knew which road to choose and knowing that we can make that same choice. Earlier, I read a statement that said, "You're a quiet person but loved helping others." And it can truly be said that Carl never met a stranger. When Carl and Sandy owned and operated the Canyon Dry Dam, it was a rather busy and successful establishment. And I think not only because of the delicious food that was served there, but also because of the atmosphere. I'm sure Carl, along with Sandy, had a lot to do with that. It was, as well as a restaurant, part a community gathering place. And many from this church would gather there for lunch, sometimes during the week, many times after Sunday service. And very often we'd also see King 5 News there to interview the local residents about the flood. And the interesting thing, from what I've been told, is that the locals would come there to talk to each other about the flood, but not to King 5. It seemed that the people that gathered there were family. King 5 wasn't. And then I found this little story I wanted to read, and I think it's quite fitting, because when I read it, I thought of Carl and his love for helping others. And it's called The King's Highway. It goes like this. Once upon a time, a king had a great highway built for the people who lived in his kingdom. After it was completed, but before it was open to the public, the king decided to have a contest. He invited as many of his subjects as described to participate. The challenge was to see who could travel the highway the best, and the winner was to receive a box of gold. On the day of the contest, all the people came. Some of them had fine chariots, some had fine clothing and fancy food to make the trip a luxurious journey. Some wore their sturdiest shoes and ran along the highway on their feet to show their skill. All day they traveled the highway, and each one, when arriving at the end, complained to the king about a large pile of rocks and debris that had been left almost blocking the road at one point, and that got in their way and hindered the travel. At the end of the day, a lone traveler wearily crossed the finish line and walked over to the king. He was tired and dirty, but he addressed the king with great respect and handed him a chest of gold. He said to the king, I stopped along the way to clear a pile of rocks and debris that was blocking the road. This chest of gold was under it all. Please have it returned to its rightful owner. The king looked at him and smiled and replied, "You are the rightful owner." "Oh no," said the traveler, "this is not mine. I've never known such money." "Oh yes," said the king, "you've earned this gold, for you have won my contest." Then the king told him, "He who travels the road best is he who makes the road better for those who will follow." I just thought that was a really good lesson and example for all of us to consider as we reach out to help others, as Carl did so many times. Okay, I shared this morning. I've talked for a while. Now it's your turn. So hope you have some memories and hope you have some stories that you'd like to tell and share. So let's take a few minutes and share with each other. So just open the floor up. I think we've got a microphone back there.
Yep.
Float around so we can hear everybody.
What has Carl meant to me? That's what I've been thinking about since Sandy asked me to say something here today. Carl had a great sense of humor. My first year at hunting camp, everyone quickly learned that I really like ketchup on everything. One of the following years, after Carl closed the restaurant, he brought me a big gallon can of ketchup at hunting camp. And he said he wasn't sure if that would be enough. And he chuckled that laugh of his. He liked to joke, and he had an infectious laugh. In the years since that first hunt together, we developed a really close relationship. I'm very grateful for the times I would get to stop by and help Carl with the things like light bulbs and gutters and computers and just maintenance around the house. I know that was helpful for him, but what I got out of it was so much more. I think of all the times that I told him no more ladders. It wasn't just a safety thing for him, but kind of a selfish thing for me, because that meant more excuses to go hang out with Carl. More recently, since they moved down south, Carl would check in on me at least once, sometimes a couple times a week. I'd answer the phone to hear him say, "Well, how's Mr. Frank?" Or "How's that gentleman farmer?" Or "that great white hunter?" I loved hearing those words. I always got a kick out of it because he preferred FaceTime. Once he got me on the phone, I would hear FaceTime chiming in. I'd love to see his face after they moved. Carl was very generous. I will always cherish the things that he shared with me because they are a reminder of him. When I found out Carl had passed, I was away on a hunting trip. It was a hard blow to hear that he had passed, but I instantly found comfort in knowing that he was with Jesus. That afternoon, I jokingly said to the guys, maybe God will decide to give me a giant buck that I can dedicate to Carl. Silly as it sounds, I shot one of the nicest bucks of my life the next morning. That was the most emotional time I'd had after taking an animal, and I know Carl was with me. I do dedicate that buck to Carl, and I'm thankful for having him as a hunting partner and a friend. So what has Carl meant to me? He was a dear friend. He may not have known it, but he encouraged me to do better. I loved to hear his stories. I would listen to him like a grandson listens to his grandpa. He was a hard worker with a ton of life experience. And when someone like that speaks, you better listen up. He was a good man, and I miss him dearly.
Yeah, I'm another one of Carl's hunting buddies. You know what? There's so many stories I could be here for an hour. But one of the funniest ones was Carl loved to make horseradish. And we were at camp this one time, and he takes his horseradish and he just put it in a bowl. Well, this guy from Oregon comes up, and he thinks it's mayonnaise. And he put about a half an inch of Carl's horseradish on his beef sandwich. You should have seen that guy. He was doing the St. Vitus dance all over that tent and screaming and yelling and couldn't figure out what happened until we calmed him down. You know, but another really funny thing that happened, I have a grandson. He's a quarter black. He's a quarter native, and the rest of him is supposed to be white, but we don't know. Anyway, so he's about 5 years old, and Carl and I are on the phone. And we get done, and my grand goes, Grandpa, is that guy white or black? I said, he's not even when he's red. He goes, there's no such thing as red guy. I said, yeah, there is. A few days later, Carl's at the house. Carl walks up to him, he goes, I'm the red guy. That's the kind of, you know, Carl had a really dry sense of humor. And if he found a way to really use it, he did. And so many times, I mean, so many times, we were the recipient of Carl's love. And one of them was he loved to cook. And every time he made something, like salsa, or Carl would pull up and we'd see him with a bowl and we knew, well, we got some kind of goodie coming. And you know what? It was always at least twice as much as we could use. So Bill got a lot of it because, you know, we'd split it. But the thing is, you know, there's guys in life that you play with, you pray with, and you just love them. Carl was that kind of guy. He was the kind of guy that was really easy to love because you know what? He loved everybody, and he did it in a way where it was unassuming, and he was just a real genuine person. And you know what? I count it a blessing to be his friend. You know, to this day, we all miss him, but we miss the subtle things. You know, his dry sense of humor, especially because he would call me on the phone about every week or two. He would call, and it would get to the end of the conversation. He would go, "Well, I'll see you." Click. No, it was different. Goodbye. Okay. Have a nice day. When he was done, he was done. And so, that's the kind of guy he was, you know. And like I said, I'll never forget him, and I love him to this day. So, anyone else?
I thought I was going to be able to just stand up here, but I wrote it down because I know every time I read it, I cry. So please bear with me. It's funny how I hear the stories that y'all tell about him. We all knew the same man because you're going to hear the same thing that y'all have been saying. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Kim. I'm the stepdaughter that he didn't think he wanted but couldn't live without.
Didn't think he wanted but couldn't live without.
One of the very first times that I met Carl Kvarnstrom was when he came over to the house for dinner with us. It was a Friday night, and being nearly 17 years old, I love to go out with my friends. As As I was backing out of the parking spot in front of the house, I misgauged the length of the little dark blue truck parked at an angle right to my right, and I backed up into it. Imagine the dread of going into the house and telling him. He was very gracious about it, just that I knew I should have pulled a little further forward. I liked him immediately. Not long after that, Mama and he decided to get married, and he became my papa. We moved to Belfort to his house in Allen and started this journey of family. Every morning as I headed for the shower before school, he'd say, "You eatin' this morning?" Every morning I would say, "Yes, please," and take my turn in the bathroom. As I passed back through the kitchen and headed for the stairs to go down to my room, I'd pick up the plate he made for me. I'd say thank you. He would just kind of grunt with his back turned toward me. As my friends started to come around and meet him, he became papa to them too. When the phone rang and it was for me, he would tell the caller, "Just a minute," and look at me and grumble, "It's for you," and hand the phone off. I'd say hello to my friends, and they often asked me if I was in trouble. I wasn't. It's just his way. After I graduated and moved out, he'd call me and ask, "Gonna come around anytime soon?" I took that to mean he missed me, and I'd wander in for a visit. When I got pregnant with my son, I had no idea that he'd never been through a pregnancy before. One day, when Christopher was being overly active inside me, I took Papa's hand and put it on my belly. Christopher took that moment to introduce himself by giving him a good kick. Papa's eyes just about popped out of his head. He looked at me with such awe and bewilderment. In April of 1992, Christopher made his way into the world, and somehow Papa got to hold him first. Even before I knew him, Papa had already introduced himself to his grandson. I think it was that very moment that Christopher became Papa's little buddy. When Christopher was 6 months old, the three of us hooked up the camper trailer to the pickup and tailed Johnny and Bernice Lax to Tulsa, Oklahoma for a national POA show. This was before cell phones, so all we could use to communicate was CB radios. Johnny would come across the speaker and say, "Carl, are you okay? We can't see you back there anyway. We just passed milepost 282. I'd glance over and realize Papa had been gradually slowing down because he was talking to Christopher while he was driving. Oh, and we were at milepost 250. Do you know how long it takes to drive across to Oklahoma at 50 miles an hour? We decided he either needed to talk to Christopher or drive, but not do both. As he had already retired and Mom and I were busy with the day-to-day running of Pretty Canyon Drive-In, Papa became the primary caregiver of Christopher. They went everywhere together. Once Christopher got mobile, the two of them were always together and off on adventures. For many years, they spent a good portion of the summer driving around delivering Halton Johnson's corn to the area grocery stores. They never missed a chance to stop at the chicken store, a small convenience store on the south shore of the canal near Belfair, for chicken and strawberry milk. I still can't remember what the real name of that store is. Papa really enjoyed the customers at the restaurant and soon became friends with everyone that walked in the door. He'd often wander over to the house with Christopher in hot pursuit with a handful of smoked salmon packages and plop them down on the table in front of him and say, "If you don't like it, feed it to the dogs." He'd either settle in for a chat or wander back out the door. Either was just as lucky, but the salmon never went to the dogs. In the wintertime, when it got dark early, one of his favorite tricks was to stand outside the kitchen window of the restaurant and wait to be noticed. Being inside, you expected the reflection of the window to be your own, and it never failed to give a person a jolt when his face was the one that stared back to you. He would grin knowing he just got you and go back to the house. Having a special place in his heart, Lena Allen was one of his favorite targets. He was a very quiet man. You just never knew what he was thinking about. Sometimes out of the blue, he would say something that was the answer to a question or comment on a subject that was talked about hours before. One day, he left to go to Olympia to get bread for the restaurant, came home with a brand new car. Mom was as shocked as I was. Anyone who would spend time with our family knew he loved to play cribbage. Somehow, he always got the card that would earn him points on the next play. He had uncanny luck, and we all took great joy and performed a bit of a happy dance when we beat him. When I moved to New Mexico and started day working on a Black Angus cow calf operation, he used to call me and say, "How's the old calf catcher doing?" or some other appropriate phrase. When I came off a horse and broke my wrist, he asked, How's old broke arm doing? I know that there are many here today that receive those same kind of greetings. He would proceed to ask me, that old truck running okay? What's the price of gas down there? I'd tell him it was running okay, and I don't know the price of gas because I only buy diesel. I'd ask the price of diesel, and he'd say, I don't know, I only buy gas. After a few minutes, in what seemed like his style alone, he would abruptly say, well, I'll get off here and quit bothering you. Goodbye. And just like that, he'd be gone. The phone calls were never about gathering information, but instead it was his way of reaching out and connecting with people that he loved. In June 2019, Mom and Papa decided to sell their house. I asked them if they were interested in moving to New Mexico. I encouraged them to think about it for a few days. We'd talk about it at the end of the week. They decided to make the move, and within a week, I was getting 10 to 15 emails a day with links to homes to go look at. Could you go look at this for me? Mark and I found a place about 10 minutes from my house that suited their needs, and on their behalf, I signed the papers. They moved down at the end of September 2019, and once again, I lived right down the road from Mom and Papa. Although it took 15 years for Papa to actually say the words, I love you, to me, I never doubted his love for me. There were many things that were definite with him. He was enamored with his grandson. He never refused to hug. He was the first to make comfort food. And Papa's lap was never too small for me to crawl in when I was sad. I think today would be a tuna casserole kind of day. I know in 36 years that I disappointed him several times, but never did he ever withhold affection from me. And to this day, he's the only man in my life who never let me down. I feel incredibly grateful that I had the chance to tell him before he died. I miss him so much, but I know we'll see him again in heaven. Thank you all for coming to honor the man that was my Papa. Now I have one from my son that's going to be even worse. Christopher sent this to me this morning. He's in Rota, Spain, in the Air Force, and a little far away. He says, wow, I knew this day would come, but it seemed like it was always so far away. After Papa passed, I could feel a void. I knew I had built my last birdhouse as the learner, and with each one I build now, I will be the teacher. I get to sit back and watch my children smash their fingers, just as he did as I was a child when he taught me. I'll have to teach my children to remove and sharpen mower blades when the mower sits on blocks. I'm now the teacher for a whole slew of things. If I ever want to track the weather for years at a time, I'll be doing so knowing I won't be able to share it with him, but that my own children will be a part of that. For those of you who knew him well, and some maybe who didn't, you'll understand when I said he could be difficult. There were no gray areas with him. You were either doing something the right way, or he'd tell you how to fix it. And you did. Tarring roofs, smoking salmon, grilling meat and veggies, planting flowers, washing your car from the bottom to the top, and rinsing it from the top to the bottom. Respect. He taught me respect. Work ethic, not being wasteful, taking pride in your work, and being responsible. These skills are traits that should be learned by all young men, and as the world changes, I think about how thankful I am that he taught me these things early. I could never said thank you to him directly, not because I was afraid to, but because I hope, he already knew. Papa was ornery and temperamental and stoic and direct and grumpy, but he was also strong and patient and kind and wise. I wish I'd had the opportunity to pick apart some of that wisdom a little more in my adult years. It seems like I may have taken that for granted as a child. On the other hand, maybe I got exactly what I needed to set me up for whatever life could throw my way. I can't go through each and every memory I have of him, but for those of you who don't have the pleasure of knowing him like I did, I wish you could have. He played a monumental part in my life, one which I will always hold to deep respect and near to my heart. He was my Papa. And I pray to God that I can do for my children and grandchildren what he did for me. The stories that you have heard and continue to hear today illustrate the incredible man who loved and supported his community, his friends, and his family. There will be none other like it. He is an angel, and heaven just might have gotten a bit of an attitude. He is and will be greatly missed. Thank you. Hello, I'm the wife of that cute guy that cried up here a little bit ago. Anyway, Carl, one of my favorite people on the planet, and it was such a great joy to listen to their FaceTimes because of all their phone conversations, and then it became FaceTimes. And the very first time, I think it was the first time they FaceTimed, Frank was trying to teach him how to do it while talking. Carl, you need to do this, you need to do this. And then I hear Frank say, Carl, I'm looking at Sandy. Hi, Sandy, because he's got the phone faced the wrong way, and he can see Sandy across the living room. So he's like, hi, Sandy, and Sandy and I would yell to each other in the back of the phone conversation. That was fun, too. But that was like the first FaceTime, I think, where he was facing the wrong way, and Frank's trying to tell him, turn the phone around, Carl, turn the phone around. And then, oh, okay, I see you now. Then another time that he called, he's like, Carl, I'm looking at the ceiling, because Carl's got the phone like faced up at the ceiling. He's like, tip the phone down, tip the phone down. So he tips it down a little bit, and all you can see is his forehead. Tip the phone down, Carl. I can't see your face, or whatever. But it was just very cute. His phone conversations were cute, but I'm not really sure why I got such gross nicknames. I got, how's the woman about the night? What does that mean? I'm home. Or how's that busy woman running around the town? Okay. Also a little bit offensive, I feel like, but maybe not. So anyway, I didn't get the cutest of nicknames, but when I would miss his call, he would leave voicemails, and they are delightful. I have 4 of them still on my phone, which I play because I called him my own personal human Eeyore, because if you know his voice, he sounds like Eeyore. Oh my gosh. And so I have them and I listen to them, and I played one that I shouldn't have in front of my daughter because it was about my daughter, and she was like, why did you do that? So anyway, but his little messages would start with a nickname of some sort, but mine were gross. And then just wanted to check in on you, and then he'd say, goodbye. Just like Eeyore. And it was just precious. He was a precious, precious man that brought us joy every week to hear their phone conversations and to run in and stick my face in and say hi and yell at Sandy through the phone. But good man. Happy, joyful, sad, because we don't get those anymore, but I have 4 saved. I want to hear them. And then, but joyful because we get to see him again someday. So.
I'm getting old. I live on the other side of the valley, and really blessed to know Carl Kvarnstrom. And he'd call me like once a week, or every other week, and how you doing, you old fart, or you old bugger. You know, he had names for me, like, so I had to come back all the time with him on that. But we moved out to the Skokomish Valley. We would spend a lot of time at that restaurant. 4 boys raised, and they loved Carl's cooking. And we homeschooled, so we decided we need to make some bunk beds. And I'm just not that good at woodworking, but Carl was. So we'd go in his garage, and he'd use a table saw, and he'd take probably 10 times it took forever for him to cut a board, because he'd measure between the saw blade and the fence, and then on the backside. So he kept doing that. Well, everything came out just beautiful. So I'm going to miss the old fart calling me, because that's what he called me. And, just a lovely person. So thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Ross McDowell. I'm originally friends with Sandy. We both worked in emergency management together, me in Lewis County, her here in Mason County. And eventually I came over to Mason County as she retired, which was kind of a bummer of that. But she helped me out quite a bit with still coming in, and she would bring Carl with her. And that's where I got to meet Carl. He used to sit out in the truck a lot. And I was like, I don't bite. He can come in, you know, it's all good. And eventually he started coming in, and we started talking quite a bit. And then Sandy was like, he can go out and sit in the car if he likes, because it became Carl and I talking all the time instead. So I had the pleasure of going down to Yuma, Arizona with, to go down and pick up Sandy and Carl when he had his heart issue. Flew down there and then drove back with them. And one of the things that Carl boasted about, not at that, but even before, was about being related to Chief Seattle, which that to me was amazing. And he eventually had an issue where he had one of his toes removed. So I took the opportunity to get him back because I heard he does this with naming everybody by nicknames. So I called him Chief Nine Toes. So and it seemed to stick. He got a kick out of it. So I'm like, okay, well that works. So now it's Chief Nine Toes all the time. So I got to go down to Arizona with Chief Nine Toes and Sandy, and we were going to drive back. And it was going to be a 3 or 4 day drive back. And she's like, she's going to sit in the back, and you and Carl can sit in front and talk. Well, I'm pretty sure she fell asleep probably about 15 minutes in, because we talked the entire time doing 9-hour drives, if not better, just chatting away, about military. And I was in law enforcement. We talked about that. We talked about everything you could think of. Well, we stopped a couple of times, and one of our stops was in Death Valley, and we were going to stay overnight in Death Valley. And of course, I've never been to these places, so I'm just in awe, going through Mojave Desert and all this, seeing actual cactus, because I'm from St. Louis. And we did not have cactus in St. Louis, we had rats instead. So, which we talked about that too. That was one of the things about being from where we're at. Well, we go into the hotel there, and Sandy was still in the car, and Carl and I go up to the young man that was behind the desk, and so we need to get 2 rooms for the night, just one night each. And the gentleman starts doing the paperwork. He goes, "Oh, by the way, just want to let you guys know, when you came into town, you saw on one side of the road there was looked like a gas station that was painted red, and there's another one on the other side that's painted blue." We're like, yeah, we did see those. We went right past. He goes, "Those are brothels." And I'm like, okay. And he goes, "So, in case you guys wanted to know, we're just going to let you know those are brothels. They're not gas stations. They're brothels." And we're like, I look at Carl. Carl looks at me. Both look out and look at Sandy. We're just like, okay. I just looked at him and said, "Your call." Needless to say, he's like, "Hard pass." And I'm like, right on, I'm with you. We had so much fun on that trip coming back. We stayed in Pendleton. That was fun in Pendleton. And we had a ball. And like I said, I never talked so much as I did on those 4 days with him, and found out so much that he just was a genuine guy. And when he was done talking, he was done talking. You know, you could definitely tell that. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew he was really, really fun to be around, and he was a joy, and I know he was a joy for Sandy, and we're all going to miss Carl Kvarnstrom.
Hi, I'm Bernice Lax, for those that don't know me. After I married Johnny, we went down to the hamburger hut for lunch. And Johnny saw Carl there. Well, Johnny went to school with Carl and his brother, and he didn't know that they were here. So that was quite a surprise. But what I wanted to tell you about was my husband and I had sold a load of horses to a couple that lived on Kodiak Island in Alaska. And the people didn't want to pay commercial hauling because it's ridiculously high. So Johnny said, well, I probably can make arrangements to bring them up to you. So they were all for that. Well, I couldn't go with him. I had to stay home and feed the rest of the animals and take care of my mother. somehow he and Carl got to talking, and Carl said, well, I'll go with you. So off they went. I can't remember how long it took, but it took a while. But the only thing that I was told that got to me was on the way back, Carl was in the passenger seat, and he said, stop. So Johnny stopped and said, what's going on? He said, there's a grizzly bear, and I want to get out and take his picture. And Johnny said, oh no. And I don't know if they stayed there and Carl rolled down the window and took a picture of it, or if they just went on. But if there's a picture of that grizzly bear, Sandy would know about it.
Hi, I'm Patty Diamond. I'm an honorary dog. I just want to say that Papa would be very happy because the skunk cabbage are blooming. And he would call me and say, are your flowers blooming yet? And I have the great nicknames too. I run a dog boarding business now, and so when they moved to Albuquerque, every day, how many dogs do you have? If I didn't answer the phone, he'd say, how's the muddy dog walker doing? Goodbye. He'd be very happy that we're all here telling all these lovely stories about him, and I have the wonderful experience of learning his I'm done talking to you. When I first got to know him, when they were at the restaurant, hey, I want to show you something. Come here. We walk out behind the house, and he points something out in the creek, and I'm looking at it, and I turn around, and he's gone. He didn't say goodbye or anything. He just, that was it. I'm done. I'll see you later. I talk to him every day, sometimes twice a day. If he didn't get enough, or if I had different dogs coming in, he'd want to know what kind of dogs do you have. And if I got a dog in that he liked or didn't like, then the conversation went way out there. Oh, those are terrible dogs. You could just tell them you don't need that dog anymore. You like the dogs. You like the hunting dogs. Some dogs though, he's like, I don't know why people have those dogs. And he'd always, I'm the same as Kim. I have a Dodge diesel pickup. So how's your truck running? Well, you should do this for the fuel system. And well, Kim's truck's doing this and that. Kim and I never had to talk because Papa would tell me what Kim was doing, and Papa would tell Kim what I was doing. So Kim would call and try to give me an update, and I'm like, yeah, I talked to Papa this morning. Oh, okay, well, goodbye. So he was a lovely man, and I'm grateful that I had almost 24 years of calling him my Papa. So thank you, everybody, for sharing.
Sorry. I'm Lena. I'm the one Carl used to always scare outside the kitchen window. I'd be at the grill cooking a hamburger or a steak or an order, and I'd turn around and he'd be right there, and I'd drop what I was doing and he'd laugh and just walk away. But, I have a lot of memories at the restaurant working for Carl and Sandy and Kim. We became friends. They knew my boys growing up. Now they're all grown and have kids of their own. And I often think about them a lot and dream. I still have dreams about them. Like I was telling Kim earlier, I have dreams where the restaurant's still there, the trailer's still there, the house is still there, and I go visit. But I really love Carl a lot, and after a while he started calling me Pocahontas. How's Pocahontas doing today? Doing good, Carl. But I have a lot of memories with them. I'll cherish them forever. I love you guys. I keep you in prayer. And it's good to see everybody here to remember Carl, because he was very special. Thank you.
Anybody else out there? I think I had mentioned that Carl worked for the state highway department, I worked for the county, and our shops were just a little ways away. And so Carl stopped in quite often. In fact, it was a routine. I don't know how many remember that a number of years ago we had all the little rest stops along Highway 101. There was one right at the top of Pretty Canyon. There was one right there in that wooded area at by the Shelton Airport. And there was another one out by the county line by Kennedy Creek where you see all the fishermen. And the state maintained those, and they had litter bills there. And the state had a collection truck with a compactor, and they would go around once a week and empty those. And as a courtesy, they would come into our shop at the county and collect ours as well. So Carl would come quite frequently. Or there were days when he was just out patrolling, and he'd come in and he'd stop by and tell me something that he'd seen or ask a question, whatever. But anyway, the shop that I worked in probably wasn't quite as big as this room. And it had a side door just like these double doors here, but just a little side door. And my desk was up in the front corner. Well, in front of me, there was a cabinet that faced out, and then behind it was a bulletin board, and I had all my stuff. So I couldn't see the door. Well, I'd be sitting there, and I'd hear the door open. Then I'd hear a footstep. Silence. Then I'd hear another footstep. Silence. And this would go on for several minutes. And so I'd listen, I'd say, "Hi, Carl." "How did you know it was me?" "Carl, I can tell these things." And this went on for months. I think he thought I was psychic or something, whatever. Till one day he walked in and he spotted the little mirror that I had up in the corner. "Well, that's how you knew." Or his handshake, coming in here on Sunday morning. Every morning, Sunday morning, I'd come in here and "Hi, Carl," and he'd shake my hand out. Ouch! That grip. My goodness, he had a grip. I used to tease him about his handshake. So is there anybody else? I don't want to prolong, but I don't want to cut anybody off here. Well, thank you for everyone that's here and everyone that shared. As we finish up this afternoon, I just close with a little recap I put together of things that we talked about today. I'm going to read it to you, and I just simply call it Carl's poem. It goes like this. It's about Carl that we gathered today. Asking, what do we do? What do we say? We share our memories while shedding some tears and laugh, telling stories of the joyful years. Years that he spent with you and with me. And as we look back, there's so much to see. A whole lot to tell of a life so full, with so many memories from which we can pull. Is it hard hat and vest that we remember? Our hunting camp in the late September? Maybe it's the vision at a barbecue grill while enjoying the talents of his culinary skill. Be it burger or dog or homemade stew, they're all precious memories of the papa we knew. There are the voicemails saved when he called to say hi, each one ending in his deep voice, "Goodbye." Did I get that right? Okay. And the handshake grip so strong and so true as he smiled and said, "Good morning to you." Adventurous but quiet, with love in his heart, for friends and family, whether together or apart. He loved helping others, no strangers he knew. Second nature to him was the right thing to do. All the good memories, each one we can cherish, etched in our minds, never to perish. Oh yes, there's a void that we all surely feel. But let's be reminded of a hope that is real. A hope in a road that is narrow and small, where the toll has been paid and is open to all. It was open to Carl as he made his choice. He knew what to do, so we could rejoice. And as he did, so we can too. The road is still open for me and for you. So we're going to close today by singing a song, "This World Is Not My Home." And we'll keep in mind that while we're on this earth, we're all just tourists passing through from this life to the next. So we're going to stand together and let's close by singing, "This World Is Not My Home."
world is not my home, I'm just a passing through. My treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue. The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know I have no friend like you. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. They're all expecting me, and that's one thing I know. My Savior pardoned me, and now I onward go. I know He'll take me through, though I am weak and poor, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know I have no friend like you. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. I have a loving Savior up in glory land. I don't expect to stop until I'm with Him stand. He's waiting there for me in heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know I have no friend like you. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me through heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Just up in glory land we'll live eternally. The saints on every hand are shouting victory. Their songs of sweetest praise drift back from heaven's shore, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know I have no friend like you. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for the time that we've had this afternoon, looking back and remembering Carl and sharing the stories, and Lord, and just taking joy in all the things with you. So Lord, we just pray now blessings on this time of fellowship and follow. We just pray that you'll bless the food and prepare it. Just pray, Lord, that we can continue to share and remember. And we just thank you again for the beautiful day that you've given us today. Thank you for each and every one that's here today. And we just ask, Lord, that when we depart, we safe travels home. We lift all of these things up in Jesus' name. Amen. And now I just ask you to invite you to potluck and have some more time of fellowship, conversation, sharing. And there's also a book out here. If people haven't signed it, leave a comment or a story or something. So please remember to do that. It's helpful for you. And thank you again.